So we're gonna draw this section in here, right in here. Right, now keep in mind, the image that we're drawing from is a vertical image, right? We're going to be putting it on a more of a horizontal, or this is more of a square actually, so it doesn't affect us so much. Now with the landscape, remember when we did perspective last year, 1 and 2 point perspective? What was the thing, that line that went completely across the page? What was the name of that? Does anyone remember? Thank you. The horizon line. Now, Lexi, can you define, like, how do you explain the horizon line? Okay. Which you're not wrong. It is a line that goes across the page, but can anyone else define it? Perspective guideline, close. It's not really a perspective guideline. You're thinking of another. No, not necessarily. Well, yes and no. Do you guys remember my analogy from last year when I said you go out to the beach or the ocean, right? And you're standing on the sand and you look out to the water. That line that goes across, that is where the sky and the water touch, right? So the horizon line is where, now obviously they never touch, it just looks that way because the earth is round, right? And as the earth goes, you'll notice that it looks like it's an ending spot. So on our picture here, where is the horizon line? Where does the sky touch the ground in this picture? Is it in the middle? Is it at the top? Or is it towards the bottom? Yes, towards the bottom. Specifically, it is. So remember, don't think of the buildings, the top of the buildings touching the sky is where the horizon line. That is not the horizon line, because the horizon line is where the ground meets the sky, right? So if we were to look at this street here, which is Gothard, goes all the way back here, right? Essentially the ground is right here where it touches the sky. So our horizon line is this right here. Okay, so where do we put that on our piece of paper? That's going to be not all the way at the bottom, not in the middle, but between the bottom and the middle portion, which is, I would say, right here. Okay, so that space, just go ahead and draw a line across. Try and get it as horizontal as possible. Okay, you do not want to draw too dark with this. Okay, I'm drawing it a little darker so that you can see it up on the screen when I'm drawing it. And the reason why you don't want to draw too dark, we're going to come in with charcoal, right? But you don't want to be able to see some of those lines through the charcoal. All right, and now so in this section down here, what do you think we're going to draw? Or what's going to go in that section below? Foreground, yes. And even some midground as well, right? So we're going to have the trees, or the palm trees, right? This one, this one, this one, this one. So everything that is underneath this line, this horizon line, we will draw. We're not going to draw the buildings in the background, right? We're mainly focusing on the vegetation, or the natural looking things. So like the trees, the grass, and then we'll draw a couple of the cars here and there, okay? All right, so starting with the objects closest to us, which is this palm tree right here, right? So the typical thing that people will do when they draw a palm tree is they'll draw this straight line, and then they'll do this, right? And they're like, cool, there's my palm tree, right? That doesn't look like a natural looking palm tree. It doesn't look like the palm tree that we now have on our screen, right? So remember, contour drawing, you're picking up those edges those varying things that make up that object. So it's not a perfect, no tree is a perfectly straight tree. This palm tree has a bend to it at the top, right? You can't see every single frond, right? So we'll start with the base of the palm tree. Be mindful of how big you're making it in comparison to the other ones, right? So this can go here. And if you make it too big, you can always change it later, okay? And so keep in mind not to put this palm tree or this tree trunk too close to the left edge, because we need to put another tree in here, which is going to be this one right here, okay? All right, and then it's gonna go and shoot up. Again, I'm just looking at the shape, and then it's gonna bend a little bit, right? Contour drawing, remember, it's kind of like a continuous line. I'm going to end up erasing this part of the horizon line. So I'm mainly right now focusing on the outline of it. And also notice how it's wider at the base and then it thins out as you go up. So I'm fixing it right now and making it thinner. Okay. And at the top, alright, I'm not going to draw the top just yet because I want to get all of the other ones first, and there's different things that I want to show you with drawing the fronds of the palm tree. Okay, so there's this one, there's this tree trunk. Okay, I'm going to put everything down first in terms of like the outlines of objects. Why am I doing that? If I spend too much time on this and get it all super detailed, and then when I draw the other ones, I realize that I made this first one too big and I don't have enough room for other ones. So that's why I want to just do the general shape of it first, and then go ahead and add the other trees that are also in the midground and background. Okay, so now I'm going to add the one here on the left, which is smaller. Notice how it barely even goes halfway up the tree. So I want to make sure that this other tree is not way up here. It's going to end about here. So I'm giving myself like a little marker right there. Okay, and then the trunk starts not lined up with the first palm tree we drew, but a little higher up. Okay, so it's about here. And again, this one's not straight. It actually curves to the right if you look at it in the image. All right. And notice how the branches of the tree also go behind the palm tree that we just drew. So I'm just going to draw the main trunk first, again. And then from that main trunk, there's a few branches that come off of it. And then goes over and connects with the other palm tree. In terms of going from a tree trunk to branches, typically they fork out. Okay. Okay. I'll leave it at that right now. Okay, again, we're just getting the general shapes of our trees. All right, now we're gonna go and do, since we're just mainly working around this first palm tree we did, let's go ahead and do this one in the background. So this is, I would consider these two, the palm tree and the tree we just drew, to be the midground, and the one we're gonna draw next, which is to the right of the palm tree, is, I would maybe consider that being the background as well, or starting off. All right, and so this tree, notice how it's higher up, the tree trunk starts higher up than the second tree we drew, and it actually looks shorter than the second tree we drew. Okay, so it's going to start right here and it'll end about there. Okay, so it shouldn't be taller than the second tree, so it actually looks like it's shorter, but it's not, because it's in the background further away from us. Okay, and now this tree trunk is wider than the other ones, so be mindful of that. And this tree, but all three trees that we've currently have drawn go past the horizon line. Okay, Okay. And we don't see any of the other branches in here, so I'm not going to add them. We see a couple of them, but actually these two right here are probably from this tree on the left. And so I'm just going to make them come out over here, and same thing there. Okay. Whoops, sorry, there we go. All right. So again, I stopped here because I don't see any branches. It's mainly just dark, right? All right, let's move on to the tree behind it, which is this one here. An easy way to tell whether something's closer or further away, just look at the base of the object. If it's higher up on the paper, that means it's further back. Okay, it's an easy way of determining that. So now let's go to this one, this tree here. And again, it is further back, therefore the tree trunk starts higher up. And this tree trunk is not as wide as the one we just drew. Again, it goes past the horizon line. How high up does it go? It goes a little higher than the one we just drew. Okay, again, we're just kind of drawing the tree trunks right now to get us a general idea of where things are at. Okay, and if you notice, all these trees are going to end up overlapping each other. Okay, all right, that's good for this one, this tree that we just drew. And now let's move on to this palm tree over here. This palm tree is also in the background, but it's not as far back as the tree we just drew. So it's in between this tree and this tree. The palm tree base or trunk is around here. Okay, is everyone good with the spacing? Because right now we have this palm tree that we're going to draw, and then we're going to draw these other three, and you should have enough room over here on the right to have those other three drawn in. Okay, again, the base of the palm tree always, well, I shouldn't say always, but typically they're widest at the base. All right, you guys ever wonder why palm trees can sway so much? No? And not fall like these other trees? Anyone ever, or does anyone know why? Yes, that's part of it. Yeah, super flexible. Their roots are also very different than these trees. The roots of palm trees are like hairs, or like, no, fingers. Like they have thousands of fingers. Yes, but they're different roots, Matthew. So the roots of these trees have bigger thickness to them, and they're not as many. And they're built with roots that are like fingers, and they stretch out so much. Okay. No, Matthew. If you've ever seen the roots of palm trees, they actually also have the color of skin, the roots from the palm tree, and they start at the base here, and they're really close together. Unlike these from a regular tree, they're more spread out. Okay. All right. And the only reason why I know that is because I've dug out 2 palm trees thinking that it was going to be easy. It's actually harder to pull out the base or the roots of palm trees than it is a regular tree. All right, this other palm tree that I drew should be also a little curve going to the right, so I'm going to fix that. Yeah, it's super. I didn't. Yeah, me not knowing when I dug out the roots of palm trees, like, oh, it's cool, this will be easy, I'll do it in like an hour. Nope, it took me a few days. All right, so that's this palm tree, which is this one here. And then now we can draw these other 2 that are way far in the back. I think these 2 back here are the ones furthest. And if you notice, the bases don't look as wide as these 2 that we are closer to us, right? All right, so let me go ahead and now same thing. Notice how the base of this tree, this palm tree, is really close to this one, so it's almost coming out of it. It looks like it on the in the picture. Okay, so it starts higher up, just a little bit, and then goes up, and it almost hides behind this palm tree that's right next to it. And so the fronds are going to be behind this. Okay. All right. And then the next one right next to it, which is this one here, okay, is a little further down, but again, really close to it. And base is a little wider and it gets skinny. So it's a good rule of thumb whenever you're drawing palm trees, the bases are always wider and then they get pretty skinny, and be mindful of which way they're bending or curving. All right, and these two end at the very similar spot. Okay. I feel like I'm missing. Did I miss a palm tree? Where? This one right here? Ah, you're right. Dude, why didn't anyone say anything? Yeah. No, I'm trying to be accurate. I'm trying to be accurate. All right. Not a problem. This is exactly why we do it, or why I do it this way, in case I make mistakes, and I'm always kind of checking back and forth. All right. So yes, I ended up this one. I'm pretty sure I looked at this one I was drawing, but then the second time I looked back at the paper, I saw this one and then started drawing that. Okay, so let me fix that. So all I'm gonna do is just make this one thinner, not as wide. And have it come up. And then erase these two, because they're gonna be I'm gonna scoot them over further to the right. And this one is not that high up, just so that everyone's aware, and it's pretty skinny at the top. All right. And now I can go over to the bigger one over here. So the space between this smaller one, which is this one, and this one, notice the space between them. So this one here will probably start, and this one's in the midground, the next one that we're about to draw. So it's close to this bottom one. So let me bring it down just a little bit more. And again, go up. Be mindful of which way it's curving. And it ends at the same height, or similar height as the other one, just a little shorter. Okay. There we go. All right, now we can draw all those other two that are further back. All right. And now we can start these that are further in the back. So when you're drawing, and a lot of you should already know. Yes, Lexi. A lot of you should already know that when you're drawing something, it's always a good idea to have a visual reference so that it's accurate. Whether we would be drawing this in front of the school, like technically I would probably be teaching you guys this in front of the school. We would be sitting in front of these palm trees and we'd be doing it together. We would just have chairs and clipboards for you to use. All right, and now the other one. Same thing, going up. So your palm trees, the tree trunks, should not look like perfect straight trunks. Okay? Notice how none of them are perfectly straight. They all curve or bend in a particular direction based off of the image. All right, we have all the trees that we need, right? I'm gonna go ahead and erase the horizon line going through all of the trunks, because obviously they shouldn't be going through the trunks. We'll worry about some of those cars later. I wanted to get the main things down first. All right, so tree trunks down, and now we're gonna start putting in the tops of the palm trees and the trees. Okay, let's start with the trees because I think they are easier than the palm trees. Okay, so with the trees, I tend to go and do the general shape or the outline of all the leaves really lightly. Okay, so for example, let's start with the one here on the left. Right, you'll see now this tree here is less dense than this one over here. So actually let's do the ones, these I think will be easier because they're more dense and you can't see through the leaves and they're overlapping, right? So let's take the general shape of it. So that is here. So this spot that I'm pointing at with my pencil is going to be this right here. And so this comes down, right? Again, very light, not too dark. And then it goes up and comes down, and then it goes over to the other palm tree over here, right? Comes down. Again, this is a very rough contour drawing of the shape of our trees. Okay, and then it goes in, comes down, and then I'm just going through each one right here and drawing the shape of how far down the leaves or those branches hang. Okay, and now you should see how it's kind of taking shape. And if you notice, this part right here should probably be taller compared to the picture, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit more. Now with this type of drawing, we obviously can't see every single leaf or every single branch. So you shouldn't be drawing every single leaf and every single branch. You're only drawing the things you can see. So if you can't see it, don't draw it. Don't make anything up. And this is going to almost be a little bit of an impressionistic drawing because we're capturing that impression, and you'll see when we start doing the charcoal. All right, so now we have the general shape of these three trees here, or two trees, 1 and 2, right? This general shape. We're gonna leave that for now. Let's move on to the one on the left. And that line kind of continues over, and then it goes up. Again, don't draw it too dark, make it somewhat light. Okay, and then the base or the bottom is basically these two branches right there. Okay, now we can see more branches in this tree on the left and then a couple down over here on the right. Okay, so I'm going to now look at the individual branches that I can see and make them kind of show up a little bit more to make it look more believable. Okay. And remember, just because I'm drawing some of these lines, it doesn't necessarily mean we might use them all or maybe parts of it. Okay. The more lines you add, hopefully the more similar to the image it looks. Okay. Just like if we were painting, before a drawing, you want to lay down the general things. All right. Does that look more closer to the image in terms of some of the lines we see? What do you guys think? Yeah, it looks better, right? All right. Now we're gonna do the same thing on these two trees here. Whatever branches we can see, let's bring them out a little bit more. Even if you see some that are sticking out, like some of these, by all means feel free to add some of those. Okay. And so now I'm just going to these trees, and whatever more defined edges or lines I see or branches, I'm adding them. Okay. This whole like blob of blackness or grayness here, don't worry about that. We will fill that in more when we do the charcoal aspect of it. The other thing you can look at is, you guys see how there's these empty spaces? You can draw those as well, or those empty shapes. You can draw those in or put them in your drawing, just to give you, again, an idea of, oh, those are going to be white or lighter. Okay. All right. Everyone's still good? Okay. Now, palm trees. We'll start with the fronds, the tops, right? And then we'll do the bark part as well. Okay. Now, the top of it. So here's a couple ways of doing this. I have this handout, kind of elaborate on that. So fronds. You have the tree trunk, right? These lines end up being these right here. And then you add these fronds. Now this, you can see every single individual frond. In our picture, you cannot. They overlap, right? So what I do is I look at the fronds, right? I draw the ones I definitely can see, or the lines I can definitely see. So like this one right here and this one, right? And then I'm going to draw this one sticking out to the top and right. Okay. Again, I haven't done anything to this. This is going to disappear in a bit, because this, basically the top of our palm tree is just like almost this big blob of shape. So I like to put in these first, these lines, to kind of give me an idea of where the fronds are coming from. And the other thing that people forget is they tend to just draw the top fronds and forget that there's some that are hanging down. So all of these in here are also coming down from the top of the palm tree. Okay. Once I do that, then I go to those lines and I start adding the shapes of those fronds. And they will overlap, and at first it'll look kind of messy, but as you build more and more lines on top of those, you'll notice that it'll start to take the shape of the palm tree that you're looking at. Trust the process. A lot of the times, I mean, is Jair here? Jair, I feel like you would get pretty frustrated just because it's not coming out exactly the way it looks like in the picture at the beginning. Trust the process. And then start adding the lines and then overlapping them. You see how it's starting to look more and more like the top of the palm tree? And some of them are shorter, like the fronds, than others. And some of them are longer. At the end, try and have a very similar shape or like outline of the fronds that you have on your drawing to look similar to the same shape as the one in the picture. If you're having a hard time, what you can do is draw an outline of it on your drawing so that your fronds don't get out of that shape, like I just did right there. Okay. I bet, Jair, But don't worry, like a lot of the times people don't trust the process, and that's why, because it's not looking right. And that's the thing I don't want you guys to get hung up on. A lot of times people are like, oh, it doesn't look right, I'm just gonna stop now. No, if you just do that over and over, you're never gonna go get over that obstacle. And it's part of the reason why people get frustrated with landscapes too. It's not coming out right at the beginning, and so then they just give up, right? Okay, this is, I think, a good general shape. The direction in which you're moving, you're drawing these lines makes a difference. So these down here, these fronds, these lines go down, right? As you go up higher on the frond, you'll notice that the lines kind of shoot up and then go down, and some of them go up. Okay, so you need to find those and look at those lines, right? Okay, the trunk. People tend to do this when they draw a tree trunk of a palm tree. The only time the tree trunk of a palm tree looks like this is when it's in a cartoon. Okay? No real palm tree trunk looks like that. Okay? And if you notice too, the bark of the palm tree is here from the base here to the 3/4 of the way up, and then it gets super skinny, right? So notice how the bark actually starts just a little bit above the horizon line, or I would say, no, on it. I think it starts right on it. And so what you want to do is just try and capture some of those lines that you see. It almost looks, if you look at it, it sometimes does look like they're crossing, right? But they're not always crossing. And then the other thing is they don't have a smooth outline, right? And so what I do, I just go up the tree trunk and draw the lines that I can see or that show up on the picture. And it does tend to have that kind of pattern of going back and forth, but they're not always straight, okay? I'm going to make my tree trunk a little thinner. I feel like it's a little too wide compared to the other ones. So I'm just reshaping that. And then I'm going to make myself a marker right here. And that is going to be this right here. And then the next marker that I'm going to make myself is this one right here. And that ends right below the first frond. Right? And it's almost like a bulge sticking out from the sides as well. Okay. And it almost looks like I've been scribbling on the tree trunk for the bark. It's in the what do you mean, Matthew, in the shadow? Like for the tree, or? Like right now, in terms of details, like every single detail does not matter, yes, in that sense. We'll add more details with the charcoal, just like we did with the bottle. Yes, correct, okay. That's exactly what I was thinking. I just wasn't sure if that's what you were referring to. Yeah. Alright. We just, again, want to get like a basis of what it's supposed to look like, so that when we do start the charcoal, we know where to go and then know where to add the details. Yes, so you're absolutely right. Okay. I'm gonna bulge the base a little bit more. I feel like it's a little wider down here. Okay. All right. And now, one thing I do want to point out, if you look at this palm tree and compare it to ours, we could have made it a little taller but because of the proportion of the paper, it's more squared off than vertical. We have to kind of shorten it a bit. Okay. All right. Let's go on to this palm tree over here. So same thing. The fronds again. Start it from the center, right, and look at which direction those fronds are going, and then draw those lines coming out of it, and then start adding the hanging fronds coming out of it. Sorry, I hope, can you guys hear my son's class in the background? Oops, sorry. All right, there we go. Does anyone need me to? Sorry. Dylan, ponte los audífonos. All right.
Well, my stuff is over it. I can't put so much of it on.
Conéctalo. Ok, quita eso y conéctalo. All right. I'm gonna make this tree trunk a little skinnier too. I feel like it's a little too wide compared to the other ones. Okay. There, that looks a little more. But you know what? I bent it the wrong way. It should be bending to the right. All right. Okay, did everyone draw all those fronds? And then same thing with the bark. Now this bark that we're going to be drawing is less detailed than the one we drew earlier because this one is further back, right? So again, in essence, these bark parts here are going to be closer together on this one that we're drawing, just because we can't see a lot of the detail, and it almost just going to look kind of darkish, especially when we start shading it. Where's the light coming from, by the way, for this drawing or this image? Yes, absolutely. And how can you guys tell which direction the light's coming from? Absolutely, the shadows. Okay, the shadow coming off of it. So there is another tree right here, we just can't see it. We can see the shadow, and then the shadow for the palm tree. Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing we need to draw after this. All right, so continue on to the next palm tree. Same thing. Now that I've shown you how to do it on both those palm trees, now you can do it ahead of me if you're waiting.
¿Cuántos bebés?
And then just watch me do it. Or go ahead, if you already feel like you got it, right? Then go ahead and move on.
Yo
What so far is the hardest part for people?
sapos. Pi
So what has been the hardest part for people?
Okay. Pi, pu, pa. Yo veo más
The bark
sapos.
is difficult. Elise, what do you mean by getting the leaves right? You mean for the fronds? For the palm trees?
Pu, pa. Yo veo dos patos.
Okay.
Pa, pa,
Yeah, the fronds is, I would say, the most difficult part to get used to. And again, try and just get the general shape of the fronds or the palm trees,
más
and then when we come in with the charcoal,
patos.
we'll be able to add a little more
Pa,
detail,
pa,
so it looks a little more similar to
pa.
what it is that we're looking at.
Yo veo dos pájaros. Pío, pío, pío. Yo veo más pájaros. Pío, pío, pío.
And so this line that I just drew right here is this one right here for where the bark is at, and then it gets super skinny. Okay, and then it ends down here, right at the horizon line. So actually, I guess I didn't need to erase that earlier. Okay. And this bark is a little more detailed, so you should be able to see it. So.
Okay, I can leave the meeting.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
She said after we're done reading, she said leave the meeting.
Okay, sale. Okay, cierra tu computadora.
I already did.
Okay, okay. Ve a jugar, por favor. Papá todavía tiene que hacer clase.
I'm just gonna stay in here and eat.
Yes, Rosie, go ahead. You couldn't fit them? I mean, they're supposed to, if you look in the picture, they are touching right here. Ah, these two? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry too much about it. If you notice on mine, I think I made this one too tall compared to this one. If you look at the picture, how much space there is right here, I don't have that much space on there. Again, this could be because these are supposed to be taller, but the paper isn't as tall. So yeah, don't be too concerned about that, Rosie. And that goes for anyone else. And that happens sometimes, by the way, when I'm doing a landscape drawing or painting. I realize that there's some spacing issues, and that's where you come in and you kind of have to make that decision. How close to it do you accurately close do you want to make it, or do you want to kind of take a little bit of a artistic liberty and change it up a little bit? And obviously I'm not saying you should go ahead and change it completely. I'm just saying little things that are slightly different on your paper than they are in real life is okay. So don't worry so much about that. All right, now I'm moving on to the last two palm trees. Keep in mind, Jair, is this the finished drawing? And remember also, when we did the bottle, how did the bottle look at the beginning, right? And then how did it look at the end? Keep that in mind, Jair. Remember, trust the process. Don't be a hater, Jair. Trust the process, which I think you have one of the hardest times doing. All right, now I'm gonna do the bark. this one. And again, we're also going, the other thing too, Jared, I want to point out for everyone, we're going more for this, for the sake of this, since we're using charcoal. After that, it's going to be a little more of an impressionistic look or style, which means a lot of the details will kind of be not blurry, but not as super detailed, because charcoal doesn't necessarily allow us to have a lot of detail. Okay, so be aware of that as well. Okay. All right, so I have the general look of the trees, the palm trees. Now I'm going to add shadows. So this one shoots out at an angle from the base, and then this one, right? And then this one over here has a really thin shadow, and then all these other ones also have a shadow, and there's even, remember, there's a shadow down here. Shadows are super important. They are what put your objects into the ground. So these right now, these palm trees here, are look like they're floating when you compare them to these three. These three now have a shadow, and now they look like they're actually in the ground, and have a place in the foreground and midground. So a lot of times people forget that shadows actually do something. So all your shadows should be going to the right. And now these down here are going to look more like blobs, because this area here, the shadows from the tops of these trees are touching or hitting the ground and then blending in with the other shadows from the other palm trees. So that's why I say it's going to look like a blob. All right. Why don't we pause here?